ideas and also discussion. So we hope you enjoy today's event, and let us begin. The first symposium of today will be delivered by Professor Dr. John McCarthy from Australian National University with theme The Paradox of Agrarian Change, Nutritional Security and Rural Change in Indonesia. This session will be moderated by Ms. Astrida Fitri Nuriani MSI from Universitas Brawijaya. We remind you that there will be a reward for best question from the audience, so we encourage you to explore the topic even further, and any question will be greatly appreciated. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Dr. John McCarthy and Ms. Astrida Fitri Nuriani. Time is yours.
Thank you very much for the MC of the conference. I would like to open our symposium session today by introducing you to our esteemed speaker, Professor John McCarthy, who had kindly allow us to enjoy this afternoon by having a thoughtful and insightful discussion with him, hopefully. I have perused his speech manuscript for today, but before I introduce you all to his topic, I would like to introduce you first to the background of Professor John. Professor John, I would like to ask your permission to read out your profile from Australian National University's website so that we could get an overall background of your academic research and achievements. So Professor John McCarthy is an associate professor of Crawford School, Resources, Environment and Development Program of Australian National University, and his qualifications are as follows. He obtained his BSc from University of Melbourne and later a BA honor from Monash University, and his PhD was obtained from Murdoch University. So he works on questions of governance, institutions, and rural development with a focus on forestry, agriculture, food security, and land use. He was previously a research fellow at the Asia Research Centre, Murdoch University, Western Australia, as well as Leiden University in the Netherlands. So among his publications are as follows. He conducted a research in several areas regarding or related to his discipline. And the first being how nutrition and food and environment in Indonesia is actually related to a sustainable food system. He conducted this research with several researchers from Indonesia. And then he also conducted a research also in 2021 about how he linked food, nutrition and environment in Indonesia, and a rapid assessment framework for food system shocks. And this is related to how lessons learned from COVID-19 or COVID-19 is implemented in the Indo-Pacific region. So we could discern from these several research that is actually concerned in how sustainable food system has to be advocated and implemented in various regions in Asia, including Indonesia. He also conducted a research related to labor migration and livelihoods. Now on to our topic for today. Why is food security a relevant and important question in Indonesia? The answer is as follows. As from now, 19.4 million people in the world in Indonesia is unable to meet their dietary requirements. This is according to the data from WFP or World Food Program. And among children in Indonesia, 37.2% of children under 5 are stunted, while this is from a population of 258.7 million. And as we know that Indonesia is a lower middle income country, however, it is the largest economy so far in Southeast Asia. With such a rapid economic growth over the past 10 years, a sustainable food system and a sustainable food security that is implementable across different regions in Indonesia is still a big homework and an assignment for all of us, not only for decision makers, but also for researchers and other people, stakeholders and grassroots who are concerned with the question of how to provide food securely, including for vulnerable households, which is why for the topic of today, when Professor McCarthy is going to talk about understanding world change and how scenarios of agricultural change, income diversification, and nutritional insecurity in Indonesia has to be addressed, this is a relevant question. because as I told you today earlier, as I told you earlier in the season, we are going to discuss this thoroughly, because this is not just part of some of us who should be concerned with this, but all of us, since the meeting of a dietary system would later determine how a human development index could be developed and how further generations could probably create a better steps towards development than generations today. Now, without further ado, I would like to allow Professor John McCarthy to present his speech for today. And I hope that we're going to have an enjoyable and insightful discussion. Professor John McCarthy, screen is yours.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, I've already seen your screen sharing.
Okay.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning. Selamat pagi dan terima kasih atas undangan. I'm very happy to be able to be back in Indonesia, even if it's just virtually. I really miss coming to Indonesia, so I hope we can start visiting again. And hello to all my friends in Indonesia. So what I wanted to do today was to present the introduction of our book, which is now in press with a National University Press in Indonesia. We're just finalizing it, so I'm interested to get people's input into our conclusions, which I want to present today. So this is a multi-year, multi-sited project, which involved a lot of my friends and colleagues from Indonesia in direct and indirect ways, including Henry Satoris and Zahari Zen in University of North Sumatra, and my other friends, including Pak Mas Kutanagara in UGM, and Ibu Nuita from UNCIA and IPB, and a range of other people. I won't mention them all, but probably about 20 Indonesians were helping us with this project, as well as my friend, a couple of colleagues, Andrew McWilliams and Gerben Notenboom from Amsterdam. So what we wanted to do in this project is really to understand how is the nature of poverty been changing over recent years. For us as sociologists and anthropologists, it was clear that how the statistics talk about poverty is very different to the reality on the ground. So what we've done is to try and rejuvenate rural studies for Indonesia in our own small way, because for about 30 years, people haven't been studying the rural societies as intensely as they did in the past. So we wanted to contribute by rethinking some of the frameworks around rural environments and around food security. So what I want to do today is briefly talk about the problem that we want to investigate. Then I want to briefly introduce our study. And then I'm going to very briefly touch on some of our results and our conclusions. So to begin with the problem. So, you know, if you read the statistics about rural development and change in Indonesia, you can see that over a long period of time, there's been a decline in poverty and growing wealth. And this has happened along with increasing inequality, as shown in the Gini coefficient here on the left. So prior to COVID-19, when poverty started going up again, Indonesia's poverty rate was falling below 10%. However, when we go to the field, we see problems with a lot of people still facing insecurity. So one of our questions was, why is rural poverty appearing to fall while stunting is persisting? So stunting is a kind of indicator of multi-dimensional deprivation, if you like. If people are cutting back on their food, that's a suggestion that they're also poor in many respects. So this is kind of a paradox. Why is poverty decreasing, but stunting is still high, even though it's also decreasing? So how is the nature of poverty changing? And what are the implications for how we might think about agrarian change, how rural societies are changing over time, and what are the policy implications. So if we go back historically, social scientists have really thought about how society changes in terms of this grand narrative, if you like, which I'll put the picture here on the right, which shows that people in rural communities move away from subsistence agriculture into more industrialized and modern forms of livelihood. And this is, economists call this the structural transformation. And the idea is that people gradually move into the industrial sector and or into urban jobs. And those people that are left in agriculture increase their land holdings and modernize their agriculture. So this is like how the World Bank in its report, many of its reports imagines how we might modernize the rural society. However, critical political economists suggest that this often doesn't happen as we might suggest, because as some people get rich or do well, other people fall into poverty, and we get what they call agrarian differentiation. And the third kind of narrative that we see is what people call the truncated agrarian transition, which is this idea that people try to move out of the rural society because there's not enough land or not sufficient livelihoods, but they're not able to move into the modern industrial urban sector or find work outside agriculture. So we get this kind of stuck scenario. Okay, so these are the three classical templates that we wanted to test, if you like, or think about. So this is a map from an article in 2017, which reviewed stunting across Indonesia. And of course, stunting doesn't also give us, this map doesn't really give us a good indication of multi-dimensional nutritional insecurity. It just shows children below 5. But you can see many parts of Indonesia have very high rates of stunting, even though these rates have been falling. And it's quite surprising to me where some of these places are. Like you can see several places here just outside Medan or even in East Java that have high rates of stunting. So why are poverty statistics getting better? Poverty statistics suggest low rates of deprivation, while the experience of poverty in rural communities is not quite as good as we might expect. What we see is insecure progress for many people. And so what are the causes of this? So one of our starting points is that we can't see the causes of these problems from just reading statistics. And for instance, the social protection programs in Indonesia use very complex proxies to measure food insecurity, but they don't really tell us why people are often secure. So what we wanted to do was to think about these broad narratives of change and try and think about how they relate to processes that are going on the ground. So, you know, we realize that the large-scale quantitative studies, which most of the studies on rural Indonesia that provide the prevalent picture that we read about in the newspaper or in the World Bank or in government reports, are based on these quantitative studies. And clearly they're very rigorous methodologically with their use, finding statistical relationships between various variables. But we think that they miss many of the mechanisms and causal relationships that underlie the problem that we want to look at. One of the ways of thinking about this that could help us as sociologists or anthropologists to think about this is Gillian Hart's idea of big D versus little d development. So big D development is what the World Bank and a lot of planners and policymakers think about. They think about how can we bring economic development to the countryside and how do we provide pathways out of poverty. So they do these very large statistical analyses and come up with these narratives that I've talked about. However, those of us who go and sit in village coffee shops and sit in the Kabupaten, we often are more interested in what Gillian Hart calls little d development, where here rural change is highly uneven and it's very contradictory. And this is where we find the real experiences of poverty. And this is where people progress in many kinds of small ways, but they don't necessarily find pathways out of poverty. And here, when we do the little d development sorts of studies, we can study the mechanisms and causal relationships in particular sorts of landscapes. For instance, the kind of development dynamics in oil palm are going to be very different to those in rice or those in fishing communities. And this is often missed by the big D development approach. So what we want to do was to focus on qualitative small n studies because we think they provide thicker descriptions and more robust grasps of causality. And they provide us with analytical generalizations. Okay, it's not that we're not dismissing the quantitative studies, but we're saying that we need to revitalize our disciplines and do the things that social scientists have always done in order to think about food security, vulnerability, and the problem of climate change, which are coming down on us very quickly nowadays. So now I want to just talk about some of our, some aspects of our results actually, or our approach actually. So rather than thinking about these broad narratives of change that I talked about earlier, what we did was develop a different framework, which we call a scenario approach. In the scenario approach, what we want to do is think about how actual things in a particular context intersect with the social relations and the structural processes. So I'll explain this a little bit more in a minute. So we want to look at how contextual factors, the way social relations work in the local context, and how structural processes come together to shape the possibilities for people to adapt or take up particular strategies. And we're saying over time, this leads to scenarios of change. Okay, here's a diagram where I try to represent this. So we can see the proximate factors up here on the top. Things like, you know, in a particular place, what do they grow? What kind of land use arrangements are there? We can think about contextual triggers such as floods or droughts in the local environment. And we can think about the relational processes, how the society is organized. And then we can think about broader structural mechanisms to do with how the production system or the global economy works. And then we can look about how this shapes how individual people take up their livelihoods, what strategies they pursue. And then the scenario is actually the outcome, which is the pattern of change in a particular livelihood context. Okay, I know this is a lot to take in. We spend 30 pages in our book explaining this framework. Hopefully one day people will have a chance to read it if you're interested. So what we did was, with a team of colleagues and collaborators across these different parts of Indonesia, we did rural studies, okay? And unfortunately, we ran out of time to get to Kalimantan, but I would have really loved to have had a site in Kalimantan. So you can see 2 or 3 sites in North Sumatra and in Aceh, and a number of cases in Java, in Bali, and in Nusa Tenggara, and in Sulawesi. And we had a broad group of colleagues and friends involved. So what we wanted to do was to think about who is poor. So when we think about poverty, am I going for time actually? Maybe someone could give me an idea so I don't go too far over time. When we think about poverty, poverty is relative to a particular standard of deprivation. In other words, if you're poor relative to a particular, so I can't see that, Astig. Yeah, you have some kind of insufficiency according to a particular standard. Now, economists use what we call objectivist approaches. So they create a standard, for instance, one's ability to buy a basket of basic goods. But as social scientists or anthropologists, we were interested in a social or emic concept of poverty, which is how does the community conceptualize poverty? And how do they see people moving in and out of poverty in their own rural context? So what we did was we got communities to do poverty ranking exercises, and we complemented this with food security surveys to see when and how much people were cutting back on their protein. And usually in Indonesia, people don't go without food. what I mean that they don't go hungry. What they do is they cut back on their fish, or they cut back on their other sorts of protein. So if you go to a poor community in the oil palm or the rice growing areas of Indonesia, you'll find people that don't eat fish very often, especially before the harvest or during periods of scarcity. So we wanted to understand this. So what were our results? So what we found was like I said, we had 12 studies, and I haven't represented them all in all these slides, but we found in 50% of our studies, over 30% of the people had moved out of poverty over the last 20 years, which is pretty amazing, really. That suggests how Indonesia has been moving forward, and even rural communities are making substantial progress. Of course, the mechanisms and processes are very varied. But what we found was that many of the people that had moved out of local forms of poverty, what local people considered to be poor, it was a very insecure or thin form of progress. And their integration into more modern market, more contemporary sorts of development was often uncertain or insecure. And at the same time, in these communities, when we did the poverty ranking exercises, we found that in 8 of our 11 cases, more than half of the village community were staying poor in local terms. Okay, and there were a range of different things leading to this, but what we found was that in the places where agriculture was the main form of livelihood, these poverty rates tended to be much higher. Okay, so we get both a lot of people progressing, but also a very large number of people staying poor in local terms. So the other thing we found when we did our food security analysis, that in many parts of Indonesia, there is still a period of scarcity. So in some parts of Indonesia, they call it the pacek klik. In other parts of Indonesia, they don't like this term because it suggests famine. So people aren't going without food, they're still eating. It's just that in this scarcity period, they're cutting back on their food, on their protein. So if you look at some of these results, you'll see in many of our communities, for instance, in Sawang in Aceh, around 40% of the people in the village we studied there were cutting back on fish during this scarcity period. And it's interesting that if you look across these cases, what we found was the amount to which people were cutting back on protein, more or less, were very similar to the starting rates in these communities. Now, what do we mean by our scenario approach? Henry Satoris at University of North Sumatra helped me with a really interesting study where we looked at 2 contrasting scenarios in the oil palm areas. What we found was a smallholder development scenario and an enclave plantation scenario. So what we found was in these 2 different contexts, we see the same broad structures at work around the way oil palm economies work, but we see very different contexts with very different histories, so very different kind of contextual dynamics. And we also see in these 2 different cases, social relations working very differently. So what this means is that in the smallholder development scenario, we see a significant number of people moving out of poverty, whereas in the enclave plantation scenario, the level of food insecurity or cutting back on food was much, much higher. So this was an exemplified how poverty is just not one phenomena. Even within oil palm production systems, we can see a range of different sorts of scenarios. And it would be good to think about poverty in Indonesia in a much more nuanced way that took into account these differentiated sorts of processes that generate poverty. The other thing we noted was that a considerable shift in food cultures and wider food systems. This is often called the nutrition transition. Okay, so if you go to a warung in Indonesia, we all know this, everybody's buying all this stuff. And the kids are buying jajan, the fathers are buying cigarettes. And if you go and visit them in their house, they're trying, if they can, they'd like to renovate their house. So these are 2 houses I visited in Sawang, And what I found was that people were, these two houses look like they're doing very well, but in fact, people were cutting back on their food to a significant degree in both these households. They were actually food insecure. So if you come along and do the social protection kind of survey, you say, oh, look, they've got a nice roof, a nice floor, nice wall. These are not people that deserve social assistance. But if you sit in their household and do a survey, they're actually cutting back on their protein. So what we see is people having more commodified livelihoods, losing their subsistence capacity to some degree, not being able to depend on growing things. And we get changing lifestyles and changing social needs, which mean that people make a trade-off. Do they pay for their children's school needs or do they buy fish? And we need to think about these things when we think about nutritional insecurity. Now, this is I just wanted to point to the Aceh case studies, because in the Aceh case studies, we can see a particular mechanism generating nutritional insecurity. How am I going for time, actually, Ibu Astita? Yeah, if you could let me know when I'm running out of time, that would be great. So I want to leave enough time for questions. So what we see in Aceh is two mechanisms generating seasonal scarcity. So in these two parts of Aceh we were in, the starting rates were around 30 to 40%. And lo and behold, our food security survey showed that between 30 and 40% of households were actually cutting back on their fish and other things during the scarcity season. So when we looked at this, we saw two mechanisms at play. Firstly, the Green Revolution meant that rice production had become more productive, but much more expensive. So the poor have to borrow more to produce their rice. And so what happens is that smallholders, or particularly sharecroppers,
It seems Professor John is having technical difficulties. We are waiting for him to reconnect to the Zoom link, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, he's having technical difficulties right now and is out of the Zoom link. While we were waiting, we have already talked about his research in Aceh, and that is part of his several research regarding sustainable food systems, in which it has to be acknowledged now, even though he also stated earlier in his speech that even though many of his subjects, the farmers and peasants, were already out of poverty line, by national standard. However, this is not a signification of a complete success, because they are still living in precarious situation regarding food security and livelihood. Okay, we are still waiting. Probably I'm going to ask you to retrace our steps regarding this topic. And as we all know that actually poorly varied diets based mainly on rice is the reason why our country is faced with three simultaneous nutrition-related challenges. And Professor McCarthy already talked about how stunting is probably not one of the indications of food insecurity, especially among lower income households. And more than 37% of children actually under 5 years old suffer from stunted growth. And this is caused by malnutrition, with higher prevalence among families relying on subsistence farming or living in slums. And also, notably, this is also caused by uneven access to food due to food crisis. And this is why in his speech earlier, Professor McCarthy also took us to his findings, in which he discussed how often poor households have to resort to other sorts of food as to supplement or to replace the food, the staple food that they are lacking or they cannot afford. We are still waiting for him. Yes, we are still not reconnecting. We are also going to further delve into his research earlier, in which he stated that he is going to discuss with us how are the implications of having such a precarious household might affect the living situations of these farmers and peasants before and after and during the COVID-19 pandemic, because even though there are structural transformation and agrarian differentiation and even truncated agrarian transition, there's still a discrepancy in which there are experiences of poverty and insecure progress and overall state of nutritional insecurity. This is also another effect or another causes why food security of families and communities is frequently threatened, especially in areas which was once impacted by frequent natural disasters. Aceh was impacted by the 2004 tsunami, and its social and environmental implications are still very relevant to this day. On average, Indonesia has experienced, according to World Food Programme, one major disaster every month. And of course, the situation causes a precarious situation, and vulnerabilities expose many more people of lower income households to vulnerabilities, including difficulties to obtain staple food and over-reliance on subsistence as a farming system. So they could not improve their living situation due to difficulties in accessing various aspects of social welfare, including security towards obtaining food and probably safety for children, which is why something was mentioned earlier in the speech. Okay, it seems that Professor John has not joined us. Might I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, the audience, that I respected, and that today we're going to have a giveaway session, and we're going to provide a giveaway for you, a prize for you who will ask the best question after the session. But we're still waiting for the professor to rejoin us. So there will be a book that you could get later as a giveaway prize. Okay, it seems that we have a response today. Okay.
Should we have
Yes.
a sharing session among the participants here, because Professor John is actually facing a technical glitch over his internet connection. And I think
Yes.
for the participant, if you guys want to share your perspective on food security, or you have a research on that kind of aspect, you may just raise your hand and then you just speak in this session, please. But I think it is very interesting if we just try to compare it with the PAP one right now. So what we know so far, that the Indonesian government has insisted some kind of equal development, include PAP one, and I think they have also applied a kind of outsource policy, and so far it is a problematic policy, and I think it is also related to how the outsource fund is manifested in some kind of agricultural policy as well. In Papua, my last visit in August, the policy right now is trying to figure out how to change the food security there by replacing sagu with rice, which is not really a familiar food there among Papuan. And I think it's right now we need to reconfigure once more. So what is really like to be equal here? If I think there is no, there is no such a single policy for all, because we need to adapt also in which people here or in Papua need to be treated as well.
I agree with you because actually I also conducted a research in West Nusa Tenggara several years back with the Ministry of Kementerian Desa Tertinggal. I'm sorry if I resort to Bahasa Indonesia. And they also experienced the same situation. So the staple food that the government had implemented in their case is not, oh, we have a question from Bu Nasrina. Bu Nasrina. Oh, yes, we would welcome you. Yes. So overall, my situation is similar to yours. That is, in Western Nusa Tenggara, there are several food security policy that is not completely in line with their culture. And so it causes even starvation in several situations because the staple food is not planned according to their climate and season. Okay, Bu Nasrina, I would like to apologize for not noticing your raised hand earlier, please. If you have something to say. Yes, please go on. Yes. Okay.
Because last year in Journal of Kajian Bali, I wrote an article about sustainable agriculture, which is not only related to the Jatilui rice field that is still cultivated in a more environmentally friendly way, and the produce was not only white rice but also black rice, brown rice, and the like. But what I would like to ask Mr. John McCarthy is more to the proper diets for Indonesian that already raised by Ibu Wida Ayu. That's why Papuan has to change their diet. And then in West Java, they like to eat dry food, ikan asin, yeah. And in
I'm sorry, Bu Nasrina, it seems that you are muted or probably having audio issues. Could you please repeat the question because your voice disappeared for a while?
Okay, I would like to ask Professor McCarthy whether the dried food, the dry fish, ikan asin, is really a proper diet for Indonesian, because after long term we can see that high blood pressure and the like of genetic diseases is coming up and then growing up. So the numbers are increasing. So what I'm going to ask is about dry fish that is becoming a protein source of Indonesian, most of Indonesian. But in Bali, the protein intake, because they eat pork, they don't really eat beef from the cow meats, or but they do have certain amount of protein intake that is balanced. That's what also my thesis said when I finished my master degree in the ANU, where Professor McCarthy was still now professionally teaching. Now I would like to ask him whether the dry fish is really a good source of protein for Indonesian, especially in Java. And then if Ibu Wida Ayu asks about the sagu replacing the rice, whether in Papua rice field paddy is really can be a source of carbohydrate. Okay, and then the third question could be for Professor McCarthy is how we differentiate the proteins from animals and then protein from non-animals product, such as tempe, tahu, and or even in my article, I explain about bambu tabah. This kind of rebung, sorry, has a good source of protein. So the three questions are already delivered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to respond later because I also conducted a research on bambu tabah when I was a bachelor in bachelor level, Bu Nazrina. We also have a question from Bu Umi, but probably we could move it for later because Professor John still has time to continue his speech later. Professor, welcome back. Are you having technical difficulties earlier?
Yes, sorry everyone about that. I don't understand what happened. I just got cut off for no reason and then I couldn't reconnect. So my apologies for that.
Yes, that's the internet for us.
Yeah,
Please continue.
sorry,
Yes.
really weird.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I think I was up to, just let me see where I was up to. So maybe I can just move on to my conclusions because I've wasted a lot of time. So I think, let me just share my screen. I'll try and make this short now because of the waste of time there. Can you see that? Okay, so what I was talking about before was these mechanisms at work in particular agrarian scenarios, okay? And I was talking about how that worked in the Aceh context. So one of the things that leads to poverty then is the way social relations work. We have to think about why people are cutting back on particular times in the year. And this is quite complex, so I won't dwell on this for any great length, but usually when people think about poverty and why people are cutting back, they focus on technical issues to do with the capacities of particular households, and they completely neglect the social relations. And we can't blame economists for doing that because their methodologies don't explain this. But if you're a sociologist or an anthropologist, this is your bread and butter. So I think sociologists and anthropologists in Indonesia have to step up and make these arguments much more strongly. So we think about poverty-related anti-poverty policy in a much broader way. And I think our discipline is not doing very well because we're not explaining things very well, and we've got a big contribution to make. Economists are completely dominating, and that's good. They've got a lot to say, but we need to help them. So the other thing is environment is incredibly important to what's generating poverty in these contexts. So we found a number of contexts that were undergoing some kind of boom, but then we also saw busts and we saw unsustainable forms of progress. And the people's access to land and common pool resources is critical here. And of course, over many years, they've been losing access to their land. And all these problems of deforestation, enclosure of community lands, pollution are shrinking people's subsistence alternatives and making them more vulnerable. So now just to move on to my conclusion then, I'll just make it brief. So this is a template that the kind of templates that economists have. They expect this kind of transition. And, you know, it's very useful at a very abstract level, but when you get down to the community level, we just don't see this really working out all that well. There are some people that follow this nice narrative, but for many, farming migration and livelihood diversification can also lead to stagnation, indebtedness, or it can actually just help them to get by. So this World Bank kind of narrative is not really working out. And we found that many people were migrating, but only sending back small amounts of remittances. So that wasn't actually helping them find pathways out of poverty. So what we found across our cases is three different sorts of trajectories, okay? Firstly, we get a trajectory of people that are fitting into the World Bank kind of anti-poverty narrative. They're moving out of poverty. And this is around 30% of people. And then we get a large cohort of people, which I like to compare to this crab, kepiting. The crab doesn't go forwards, she goes sideways, doesn't she? And many households in Indonesia are really, you might say, like the crab. They are making progress in terms of the statistics that are used to measure poverty. So if you go around, maybe they've got a nice tin roof and they've got a nice wall, or they've got a motorbike or a telephone, but in fact, their 30 or 40% of them are often nutritionally insecure. So they're cutting back on their protein, and hence the high stunting rate. And then we get the chronically poor, which are, the fakir, the people that the social protection program is really, it's really good that they're reaching out to those people. Unfortunately, it's very hard to target them with the methodologies they use. So in conclusion, if we look at Indonesia over the last 30 years, we can see this global market integration has provided a cohort of people with the capacity to leave poverty behind, even if it's not completely a secure route out. But it's also created new forms of insecurity, inequality, and deepening ecological degradation, which makes it questionable how sustainable these movements will be. We also see nutritional insecurity and stunting, and we argue that this is due to the nature of the way these scenarios work. Okay, so you can give people protein, extra protein, you can educate them about what they should eat, you can do all those things that the health programs do, which is all, they're very good. I agree with all those things, but they don't address the way the agrarian scenario works and how it creates poverty. So we need to think about more broadly about these social processes. And
Professor,
finally, yeah.
Probably we should, the organizing committee reminded me that we have to continue to, yes.
Okay, that was my last slide.
Yes,
okay, I can stop there if you like. There are some implications, but if anyone wants to raise
we
that.
apologize. Yes, I apologize. Okay. We already have several people earlier when you could not reconnect to Zoom who would like to ask you several questions. If probably you could continue to them.
Sure.
Yes. So we already have Bu Nazrina, and probably we should continue to Bu Umi because she already raised her hand earlier before I noted Professor McCarthy about the questions. Bu Umi, are you still wanting to ask a question to Professor McCarthy?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Hello, Ibu Umi.
Good morning. Professor McCarthy. Can you read my chat?
Okay, probably I should ask. Okay, I would read out the chat. Okay. It seems that, yeah, we're losing it. Okay. Yes, I found your question, Bu Umi. I would like to read out Bu Umi's question to you, Professor.
Okay.
So her question is about issues of malnutrition, undernourishment, stunting, even obesity, etc. in many places in Indonesia. I think the result is from cultural imperialism. Indicators is among them are being rich or wealthy, with ownership of handphones, television, clothes, cars, any other properties. So the consumption pattern, therefore, is just anything that makes them full and delicious without any care whatsoever to nutritional value. And so that's why instant noodle become the most favorite meal among Indonesians. Parents let their kids jajan that is really unhealthy since the stuff contains high level of carbohydrate, artificial spices, flavor, color, etc. What do you think of it? Okay, so Bu Umi's question, and later we're going to answer Bu Nazrina's question too. Probably there are still several questions, but we would like to address the two first because we only have like 6 minutes remaining. Professor, if you please. So mainly it's about unhealthy consumption patterns among Indonesians caused by assumptions of privileges through delicious foods, that are not necessarily nutritional.
Okay, so I mean, there's been surveys done showing the impact of television and all these sorts of things, and we get the penetration of these multinational companies into the remote villages marketing these instant foods. So just like everybody else, village people can be attracted to this. But I think if you sit in the village and talk to people about why they make those choices, it's to do with status as well. If they send their children to school without the jajan, they feel, malu. So there's a logic to why they do that. But I think it's easy for us to sit in the city, including myself here, and judge the rural people. Often what they're doing is, besides thinking about status, if you go to the rural village, the village at the end of the harvest season, everybody's eating all the right foods. Okay, but then as time goes on and they get into the scarcity season, they're cutting back more and more. So they know what to eat basically. And the reason I would say is they're cutting back is for all these other reasons. It's true, people eat the wrong thing sometimes, and there's a role for education, but often maybe the Ibu is really tired or the children want something different. Maybe they can't afford rice and it's cheaper to get Indomie. So it's very easy for us to be judgmental about the rural people. I think it's more complex. So it's a job for sociologists and anthropologists to go there and try and work out, is it really that they're making illogical choices, or is there a logic to what they're doing? And I would say there's a logic to it.
Okay. Bu Umi, is there a response to Professor John's answer to the question? Thank you, Professor, for answering Bu Umi's question. Okay. We're moving on to Bu Nazrina's question. Earlier, when you could not reconnect, she asked me 3 questions. So there are 3 questions from Bu Nazrina. She's from Universitas Udayana. And her question is about what is exactly a proper dietary pattern or staple food for Indonesians, because she also questioned why must Indonesian dietary patterns change? Are preserved foods proper because they often cause diseases, etc., high blood pressure? And is rice actually the proper source of carbohydrate? Mainly it's about dietary pattern again, but from a slightly different point of view from Bu Umi. So is preserved fruit like dried fish, are they proper? And what about rice as carbohydrate source? What do you think after observing them in your research?
Okay, so I would suggest to anyone who's interested to read that Eat Lancet report. I can put it in the chat. They have a report around what is the right kind of diet. And one of the things that Semeru has done some research on this and has shown that Indonesians consume way too much carbohydrate and that their use of vegetables and fruit is too low. And there are obviously complex reasons for that. But I think it's worth studying that Eat Lancet report, and we can also question why people focus so much on carbohydrates. If you go back if we were to go back 50 years, I'm sure people had very diverse diets. They would have eaten all sorts of things that were in the local landscape. But as time's gone on and the forest has been cleared and the fisheries have become more inaccessible and the rivers have become degraded and all these things, people are no longer able to find food in the landscape. And so this diversity in the traditional diet has decreased. And then we get the penetration of the food companies offering instant food. And then we get all the other problems to do with how diets have changed. You know, people being attracted to these modern diets. So we get the loss of the traditional knowledge. You know, when I was first doing field work in Indonesia, at the local level, we had all these little snacks that were made from all sorts of things that were available locally, rather than these jajan, which don't seem to have much in them but flour and sugar. So that's another issue for the sociologists in Indonesia to think about.
Yes. Just one last question from the chat is from my colleague, Mr. Slamet Tohari, who is going to moderate the next session. He asked us whether or not our government's policy on stunting has made any impact. Based on what you observed in the field, has the policy on stunting made any impact at all? Maybe, for example, in the region of your research location.
Okay, so look, it's great that the Indonesian government is really focusing on stunting, and I think they now want to push this over towards hidden hunger, all the other sorts of undernutrition. This is great, and I think it will take some time to know whether it's having some impact. The statistics before COVID were suggesting that stunting was falling. I don't completely understand why this is the case. So it's great that they're focusing on that, but I think it needs a more holistic approach. We can't just focus on stunting as a technical issue. We need to look at the whole food system, and we need to look at all these agrarian change issues that lead to people cutting back on food. People don't cut back on food just because they're dumb. They're not stupid. They cut back on food for all sorts of reasons that we can investigate as sociologists or anthropologists. And that, so we're not doing our discipline a service when we assume that they're cutting back because they don't know the right thing to eat. It's really, really complex. So there's a generation of research there for younger Indonesians, I think.
Thank you, Professor. That will conclude our session for today. Thank you very much for allowing us to enjoy your insightful presentation, and also for all the askers of the question. Unfortunately, I will have to pick one of them, Professor. Only one, because all three of them were brilliant participants for today, and they asked brilliant questions too. Do you agree with me? Are they good questions, right?
They were good questions.
Yes,
and
they're all.
My apologies for getting cut off then. It was what we'd say an act of God or something. It was just happened, you know.
Yes, that's the internet for us. Always full of glitches. Anyway, I would like to announce one of the winner. I mean, a winner, only one winner, unfortunately, for today's giveaway prize session, and that is Ibu Nazrina. Congratulations for winning a prize today. We would like to contact you later from the organizing committee as to the prize that you win. And for Bu Umi and Pak Slamet, your questions are also very insightful. Don't worry. It's just that I have to choose, and that happens to be Bu Nazrina's question. Thank you very much, Professor, once again for joining us today. As a sociologist,
thank you very much.
Also interested in food studies, I'm honored to join you today.
Okay.
I'm leaving the session back. I'm moving it to the MC of the conference and thanking the organizing committee for conducting this session for us. Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon to you, Professor.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak. Sampai ketemu lagi.
Yes, you're welcome, Professor. You're welcome.
Bye.
Sama-sama, Pak.
What an interesting discussion. Thank you so much, Professor McCarthy and Ms. Astrida, for the discussion. And moving right along, we will listen to a keynote speech by Professor Firman Nur from National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. He will give us a speech about pandemic COVID-19 and the challenges for democracy, the rise of political injustice tendencies. This speech will be moderated by Mr. Slamet Tohari, MA from Universitas Brawijaya. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Firman Nur and Mr. Slamet Tohari. Gentlemen, the time is yours.
Thank you, MC, for giving me chance to be a moderator. And thank you for Mr. Firman for joining us. Okay, let's start the session. I think that I'm really thankful for the committee. This conference is so inclusive. They provide a reasonable accommodation for our disabled participants. I know that there are some disabled students, then it's really inclusive. To make more inclusive, I would like to describe myself. I'm a man with short hair and blue t-shirt, and yeah, so honorable the professor, honorable the doctors, and all the audience, thanks for joining our Zoom conference meeting today. I'm here to be a moderator for our session entitled Pandemic COVID-19 and Challenges for Democracy in the Rise of Political Injustice Tendency. As we know that pandemic situation had a considerable influence in all aspects of life, including democracy and democracy change, and related to the character of the regime, people participation, development of undemocratic institution, mass media, and so forth, and also the civil society. And the most important is the minority group participation. I have an experience as a disabled and also person who highly involved in disability movement for anywhere. During the pandemic, I was involved in disability movement in advocacy of omnibus law. I don't know that is it going to be example of the undemocratic situation in pandemic or not, but on that case, that so this law and this bill is really very undemocratic. We go to our government and do the policy, do the advocacy, and then based on the reason of the pandemic, they use the government did undemocratic policy based on the pandemic situation. In omnibus law, we know that the term cacat is still used, and also the people who being disabled can be, can be cancelled or can be fired from the job. That's very discriminating. So related to the democratic and injustice tendency in our democracy, and also in situation of pandemic right now, we have an excellent speaker from Research and Innovation Agency Center, who is Professor Firman Nur ME PhD. Professor Firman Nur ME PhD. Hello, Professor.
Hello, good morning, Pak Slamet. How are you?
I'm good. And how are you, Professor?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, so Professor Firman Nur, I would like to introduce you all that he is a research professor at National Research and Innovation Agency Research Center, or we call it BRIN. His focus is on national politics, especially in political parties, development and democracy, election and Islam and politics, and political representation. Correct me if I missed it in this narration. And he got his bachelor degree from Universitas Indonesia in political science. Then he went to Australia for studying his master at Australian National University. Then he went to UK for continuing his PhD in University of Exeter in School of Social Science. That his background. Because the committee gave me so very short time, and then 15 minutes for delivering your speech, Professor Firman, and 15 minutes of also Q&A. So we really proud, and proudly we give you the time and space. Time is yours.
Thank you very much, Pak Slamet.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, due to the very short time, I must go now to the presentations, and let me share my presentation to PowerPoint. Yeah, my presentation is about the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenge for democracy, the rise of political injustice tendencies. As introductions, basically, I want to say that nowadays, even though democracy is still the most advanced political system in the world, and also become a system that approved by the majority of Indonesian people, we have a problem with it. And in the last couple of years, we have suffered a stagnation or regressions in the quality of democracy. And prior to COVID-19 pandemic, some observers say that Indonesia already not really democratic countries, but also transformed to be a less democratic country. Some people say that or label us as an elusive democracy country or post-democracy country, or etc. And indeed, like Pak Slamet said, that the COVID-19 pandemic creates new habits and attitudes also in terms of political life. Some countries can survive its democracy, some other countries not. Some countries has continued his authoritarian approach in dealing with the pandemic. Some others even fail to do so. And Indonesia democracy during COVID pandemic, like the last 2 years, still indicating the low quality of or the problem of democracy. So in conclusion, actually, we can say that indeed we have a strong and very solid government, but on the other hand, we have suffered democratic regression tendencies. And this has become a background of why I said there are some phenomena that indicating we are actually also suffered for political injustice. And of course, and to give you a clue, I'd like to share some PowerPoints that shows our positions, our quality of democracy positions. But actually, the tendency of regression or stagnation is not only in our country, but actually it is become a world phenomena. As we can see from the last 10 years, the tendency tends to become stagnations, a little bit a decrease actually, if we compare what happened to 2010 and 2020. And what Freedom House said about the global politics tendency is, since the COVID-19 pandemic or coronavirus outbreak began, the condition of democracy of human rights has grown worse in 80 countries, in which government have responded by engaging in abuse of power. So it means some countries do abuse of power or silencing their critics or opponent or opposition, and weakening or shattering important institutions, often undermining the very systems of accountability in the name of public health. So, and also, how about Indonesia? Like I said, that we suffer of degradations or stagnation of democracy. As we can see, according to Freedom House, our total score of democracy is 59, and we have been categorized as partly free. It means we are not free country anymore. In this status, we are actually not really democratic country. And it's unfortunately happened already since 2014, when our status is partly free. And if you can see, the score is from 64 to 61. And unfortunately, in this year, our score is 59. So it's even worse. And how about from other index, from Economic Intelligence Unit, we can see that they categorize us as a flawed democracy. We are number 3 in Southeast Asia, number 64 in the global rank, and number 11 in regional rank. Even Malaysia and Filipina actually is better than us, even though the categorized is still the same as a flawed democracy. And also from IDEA, one of the leading institutions that the business is about measuring democracy in many countries. From IDEA, we can see that we are actually a country with weak or low performance in doing democracy, with the color like this. And also based on Index Demokrasi Indonesia, as we can see, in terms of civil liberties, in particular of kebebasan berpendapat, our score is getting lower from the last 10 years. So in terms of kebebasan berpendapat, of freedom of speech, Indonesia is really not a good example of democratic countries that holding a good measure for kebebasan berpendapat. So this is a background of democracy based on the survey. And how about based on the writers or the observers of Indonesian politics? We can see some observers point out that democracy is still problematic in Indonesia. And in general, we can say that that the democracy situation in Indonesia does not always run smoothly. You can read some articles or some books in this with this name I mentioned to know exactly what happened in our politics, in particular about our quality of democracy. Okay, about theoretical framework. Since I'm talking about political injustice, of course, I have to mention or explain what I mean as a politics injustice and political injustice before we talk about the cases. So of course, there are so many approach definitions on politics, but for me, politics is about the phenomenon related to the structure, institution, system of power that is involved the state, government, and political actors at all levels of decision-making process and policy implementation on the values or interest distribution. And injustice, I use Bufacci approach in understanding what is injustice. And there are actually three dimensions of injustice. The first is maladministration, which means benefits and burdens are not equally distributed to everyone. So someone takes advantage of this inequality to bring about a partial distribution of resources. And the second dimension is exclusions. So where's there is exclusion, there is injustice. And what the meanings of exclusion is actions or policies undertake to exclude others as legitimate recipients of distributions of benefits and burdens. For young, it is similar with operations. So exclusions is actually the same of operations to some extent. What is the operation? Operation is a structural phenomena that immobilize or diminish a group. There are 5 categories of operations, including exploitations, marginalizations, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, and violence. And the last dimensions of injustice is disempowerment. Disempowerment, it means expose and exploits a person's vulnerabilities, in which victims of injustice are disempowered and then excluded. So it is occurred whenever people are victims of disempowerment, according to Bufacci. And what is political injustice? So for me, political injustice is the situation of politics. So it is part of my statement is actually about politics that tends to avoid, discriminate, exclude, exploit, undermine, disempower, or even destroy certain groups, and on the other hand, provides advantage and privilege to others that should have them similar benefits and burdens. So that's my definition of political injustice. And for me, there are 3 dimensions of political injustice: is maladministrations. It happens when the state or government or political structure creates condition of vulnerability and powerless for some, which makes possible for partial distributions of resources to arise and to equalities to its advantage and detriment of other actors. So basically, someone is disadvantaged or stripped by the system of politics, by the government, to be exploited then. And exclusions, the second dimension is action or policies or political structure phenomenon undertakes to exclude others as legitimate recipients to immobilize or diminish or silence a group based on wrong or misjudged approach. So in terms of political injustice, someone is wronged or is misjudged by the perceptions from the government to be silenced and eventually to be excluded or undermined. And the last dimension is disempowerment, the political structure or actions that expose, exploits, or mistreats a person's vulnerabilities, which make the victim left disempowered by the experience or feel powerless or vulnerability, or even destroyed in political activities, including in the decision-making process. So someone is treated differently as less eligible, lower status, or even no rights, and then they are alienated and excluded. And where's the domains or level of political injustice? For me, there are 3 levels or phase of the injustice. The first is in terms of substance. You can see in this injustice from the substance. This is entitled to some injustice dimension that I already mentioned before. The second is like on the process or policy making process. Sometimes injustice happen in the stage in which the government or the regime harming rule of law, or even the regime's interests as main orientations, not the people interests. And we can see political injustice also in the level of implementations, in which it's provide bad impacts or partially implemented. Before I come to the cases, I just really want to give you a background of the political injustice in Indonesia during the COVID-19 pandemic. It happens because, to some extent, the decline of political quality in Indonesia. And the second is the state has more rights to do anything necessarily, and to some extent become become the actor that attract by totalitarian temptations, as Hank has said. And also it happens because our civil society on opposition is very weak. And in this kind of countries that is categorized not fully democratic, or the democracy it's not really working, COVID-19 pandemic will potentially actually bring up the deteriorated tendency of democracy, and political injustice is one of the results. And this is the cases of the political injustice. Of course, maybe you have other examples of it, and I also actually have, but since I don't have many time, so I go with the 5.
2 minutes left.
Oh my God! So there are 5 examples of forms of political injustice. The first is omnibus law. The arrest of Habib Rizik Sihak and the FII members massacres, the law of mineral and coal, or Minerba, the implementation of law on information and electronic transactions, and the corruptors and the reductions in detention time or korting hukuman bagi para koruptor. Okay, 2 minutes. I don't think I should explain it in detail. But for me, maybe I can say that according to society, these regulations tend to push laborers to the less fortunate conditions that will deteriorate the rights of local people vis-a-vis big companies, and reflects the elitism or oligarchy tendency. For government, of course, this is a good thing. The substance is political injustice. In the process, we can see it only takes 167 days to stipulate these policies, even though consists of 11 clusters, around 80 laws, and more than 1,200 articles. In the normal situation, it takes years, but for the omnibus laws, it only takes 167 days because the president says so. And for the SIHAB, this is a good deal for a government, but for society, it's actually government's act and policy was inconsistent due to the SIHAB's political position towards government. The case of SIHAB indicates that pandemic issue is used to legitimize government restrictions, and as a substance, a form of injustice that has strong tendency of human rights violation. And also the law of mineral and coal, for the government also this is a great law, but for the society this regulation is pro-mining businessmen. It is not answering the real problem of mining activities, has a problem in the decision-making process, has a great potential to undermine human rights, and as indicator of authoritarianism. This is according to Koordinator Nasional Advocacy Tambang, Greenpeace, and Komnas HAM, YLBHI, etc. And substance give wide opportunity to damaging natural resources. And I give you some example, but of course I cannot read it. Okay, and then for the ETA, for the society, this is a regulation is specter for freedom of speech in Indonesia. And the substance is become the background of reasons behind the misjudge or misperceptions towards people that ends up with the mistreatments and disempowerment. This is some cases related to the Undang-Undang ITE. For instance, Zaki Amali, Said Didu, Raffio Patra, Jerings, Ustadz Maher, Haikal Hasan, Munarman, Denny Siregar. I hope you can read in the PowerPoint that I given to the committees. And about the corruptors and the reduction in detention time, the substance is very simple. That COVID-19 pandemics, to some extent, for some, is a blast for corruptors. People becomes eyewitness for political injustice, in which the verdict or sentence given by the court to the corruptors is not equivalent to the potential damage or disadvantage that state or people could receive. For instance, I give you cases including related to Julie Peter Batubara, Jaksa Pinangki Sirna Malasari, in the case of Joko Chandra, Musa Maliki, Lucas, and some other names, including Ose Kaligis, Irman Gusman, Patrialis Akbar, and Zulkarnain. The interesting point is it is the first time in Indonesian law history that the bully from the people is counted as something matters that can reduce the sentence. Yeah, the Hakim said why they just give 12 years jail for Juali because Juali has already suffered by bullied by the people. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And this is a political map. So this is just like kind of conclusions to show that all the dimensions and all the levels of injustice occurred in all of the cases. And potential impacts, will increase the distrust towards political institutions, increase suspicions on public administration malfunctions, increase potential of inefficiency, corruptions, oppression, annihilations. And for democracy, is decreasing public trust. Democracy becomes just a name, empty procedure, and democracy does not work as it used to be. And as a closing remark, it's all about solutions. So I propose that the first solutions goes to the state, in which the state have to expand the spirit of freedom of speech, participation, and accepting and proving criticism and opposition, in particular participations, because of all the examples I mentioned, we are really can see the lack of participation. The second is to provide political education and strengthen the economy of the people so that they could not easily excluded by the political life or process. And the third is to strengthen and performance of democratic institutions, especially political parties, in playing, guarding the quality of democracy life and avoiding political injustice. And the last thing is to enforce the law, which could guarantee the implementation of justice and trust in government and democracy. And the last thing, and the second is for civil society as a very elementary, important elements in democracy. Civil society, we hope that they could develop proper understanding on their rights and obligation as citizens. So, and then to maintain activities that support the promotion of democratic awareness, to avoid political injustice, and to collaborate with various parties in order to urge the authorities to tailor the aspiration of many people in decision-making process and the implementation of government policies. The last slide is for political society or political party, in which party cadres nowadays play a very important role, pivotal role in decision-making process, that we hope that the political parties to establish internal democracy in order to generate cadres with a democratic mentality to avoid, in the end, a kind of support towards any kind of political injustice forms. And the last thing is to conduct socialization and evaluation to all cadres related to the values or ideology and democracy to preserve justice at every level of political activities. I think that's all. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Professor Firman, for giving your presentation. That's very insightful. That I don't want to summarize because we have so limited time. Now we open time for question and answer. For those who want to give a question, please raise your hand with the clicking the button of raise hand in the Zoom platform. Any question? Or you can write the question. Yeah, you can in the chat room. So there is a question from Andini. How about your opinion omnibus law convent when Puan Maharani turned off the mic when someone giving the statement about that? Is it something that interpreted how someone can be treated as lower status or no right or something? So that's on the question and in chat room. Yeah. Please, Mr. You want to, yeah.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, Puan did it when one of the members of Democrat country members asking quite critically on the process of the making process of this undang-undang, this law, yeah, asking, and also asking the substance of this law. So it seems that Puan is quite bothered with the questions, and reflectively, he then do what he did, what you said, and it indicates that it is not really a nice gesture for the head of the meeting, since actually to some extent is an effort to shut up or to silence the critical point of view, even so you can imagine if the elites treat its own membership, its own fellows like that, how about the ordinary people they will treat? So it is a picture of the way our elites now react to critical statements or to something that not really in line with their interests. So this is really quite very bothering in terms of freedom of speech. And the survey actually is in line or quite right to picture what happened in Indonesia in terms of decision-making process, in which the participations, the real participations that should invite all elements and all perspectives should be accommodated rather than to be shut up.
So thank you. So there's one question more from Irza Khairuin. My question is about the decline of democracy index in Indonesia. Do you think this is influenced by the leadership of the president and political parties, or there is a tendency to increase conservatism among Indonesian people? So yeah, what do you think about that?
I'm not sure the definition of conservatism. It is like a conservative parties or ideologies in the Western part of the world, or I don't know. But of course, it happens in the last 7 years, and I believe that the presidents and all the elements that support presidents heard this from time to time, from years to years. But as we can see, our democracy is not getting better. It creates suspicious among the people whether actually this government has a concept or is quite serious to fix this problem, or they only take economic development as something important rather than political development. I mean is, yeah, it is indication that the elites and political elements that take care of our political life, it's actually has not tendencies to really fix the problem, because the problem is still there.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Mr. Firman. So there is one question again from Yusli Effendi, who is a lecturer from International Relation from Brawijaya University. How do you see Indonesian democracy setback worsening to the pandemic? Is state getting stronger while society getting weaker? Yeah, is state getting stronger while society getting weaker?
Okay, yes, last September, one of the important party in Indonesia joined the giants of the government. PAN is the last party that really joined, make the oppositions become more ineffective or become weaker, because only PKS and a Democrat nowadays that take a position as oppositions. That's for legislative body. And the for executive, of course, is 100% Pak Jokowi, and about the judicative, it's quite so-so. But what we can see from their attitude towards some elites, it indicates that judicative is also questionable, in terms of whether the institutions really the defender of democracy and political justice, like the courting for corruption. It is their commitment is not really there. But in general, yes, indeed, the government right now, the regime right now, like I said, is very strong and solid. The military supporter, the military elements really support this government. The police support the government. The majority of the businessmen support this government. We sometimes call it as oligarchs. And the majority of media support the government, even though media is actually part of civil society. And you can see that civil society is not really become a balancer for this part of the regime, to be part of the government, in which some of the civil society actually very close to the president. And yeah, I mean, in all aspects, almost in all aspects, plus the weak oppositions and then the civil society, we can say and we can conclude that this regime, this state is very strong, very, very strong. But unfortunately, with this strength, they do nothing or very limited things they do to develop our politics, to develop our democracy. Actually, if the government have a strong commitment to democracy development with that kind of strength, they can do anything to fix the problems of the, as we can see from the comments of the Indonesian observers or from the last surveys, the quality of our democracy getting weaker and weaker.
I see. So the last question, I think the last question from Kurnia Indah. So Mr. Firman, I feel that since the pandemic democracy has regressed, what is your suggestion to the advanced democracy after the pandemic? So this is the question on solution to bring back the democracy.
Yeah, I agree that Indonesia is a country that that really respect their leader. So one of the key elements is the leadership. We really demand a leader that have a strong commitment for democracy. Not only the president, of course, but other political parties leaders. We really hope that in the future, they could work together to fix our democracy. And hopefully in the next presidents, whoever it is she or she, can have a very deep commitment to develop our democracy. That's the really key for Indonesia. Without a committed leader for democracy, I'm not sure that it will be created easily and smoothly. But on the other hand, if we have it, but of course, again, speaking about democracy, we talk about the quality of other elements of politics or other elements of democracy, such as DPR, such as political parties, such as civil society. So if we want to enhance the quality of our democracy, of course, on the other hand, we also must enhance the quality of parliaments, political parties, and civil society. And of course, on the other hand, we have to spread out the real values of democracy among the people. So democracy will also be very difficult to be built if the people cannot be the real supporter of democracy because they lack understanding on democracy. So the lack understanding on democracy because of the lack political education is also one of the sources why democracy become regress. So my point is also besides to develop more advanced quality of democratic institutions, we also have to spread the spirit of democracy, the values of democracy to our people through the political education, of course.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Firman, for the answer. I think that the last question, and also thank you for all the presentation and delivering your speech for this session. And it's really insightful. I hope that everybody is happy as well, because we have so limited time. I'm sorry, and as a moderator, I can, thank you much for all the participants. And so if you got some mistake from what I can do for you all, please apologize. That's what I can say. I return the session to the chair.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll give you to MC. MC, hello.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Firmanur and Mr. Slamet Tohari for the discussion. Much enjoyable. And now we will continue our event with the first parallel session for today. Yesterday, we've already witnessed a lot of thoughtful presentation from our participants, and we believe that today's presentation will be as interesting as yesterday. Now we will divide the parallel session into 3 breakout rooms in which participants will present their paper. For the participants, please change your name into following format: panel space your name, panel number space your name, as the committee write on the chat column. And please follow the instruction. And also, if you have any difficulties or question, you can ask the host in the main room. And first, we want to introduce the panel of this parallel session. Panel 1 with theme Religious Studies will be moderated by Mr. Muhaimin Zulhair Ashin, MA. Panel 2 with the theme Media Studies will be moderated by Ms. Astrida Fitri Nuryani, MSE. And panel 3 with theme Reconfiguring Gender and Intersectionality will be moderated by Mr. Faisal Iriza, MSP. Thank you, and please join your panel room by clicking on the join button. And if participants who wants to spectate the presentation, you are allowed to join any panel you want by clicking on join button. Again, if you have any question or difficulties, do not hesitate to ask our help desk in the main room. Thank you. session of the second APSSI International Conference 2021. And after this, we will have a break for 45 minutes until 12:30 West Indonesian time. So you may take your time to refresh, and we expect you to be back on time for the next agenda. Thank you very much. West Indonesian time. So you may take your time to refresh, and we expect you to be back on time for the next agenda. Thank you very much. West Indonesian time. So you may take your time to refresh, and we expect you to be back on time for the next agenda. Thank you very much.
Have I ever told you all you to the bone? Have I ever told you
West Indonesian time.
when you
So you may take your time to refresh, and we expect you to be back on time for the next agenda. Thank you very
to
much.
tell you how I feel? Listen to me now, babe. Have I ever told you to the bone? All you to the bone. All you to the bone. Have I ever told you when I want you to the
or the economy, but also public health that undermines the social cohesion, inequality, and also justice in contemporary society, in which this social cohesion and justice is important dimensions of sustainable society amongst the economic well-being, environmental sustainability, and social inclusion, of course. And as we know that pandemic is reconfigure, the life of the people, and we already experienced what it's called lockdown in some country, and in Indonesia it's called PSBB or social distancing, and we adapt to new circumstance. And I think, of course, this shifting to the new circumstance by the public health crisis provide something like a new kind of situation in which we need to like redefine or rethink what kind of social value or social cohesions are changing, either inequality or social justice being redefined also, and it is hidden behind the like the government strategy to contain the pandemic. So it is will like give us the opportunity whether to reflect ourselves, whether this virus can make our society more sustainable or unsustainable. So I think today we will like invite Professor Prank Wells in this important sessions to talk about what I already mentioned earlier. But before that, I would like to introduce our speaker before he presents to us. Professor Francois is Professor of Sociology at the Department of Sociology, Universität Innsbruck, Austria. His research interests primarily focus on sociological theory and methodology, epistemic governance, theory of subject, norms, law and society, and culture and knowledge. He published a number of books, articles on sociology of culture and sociological theory. Besides these academic activities, and he also served, he has served as a president of the European Sociological Associations, and now also become a member of a number of sociological association, whether it's international, in international level, or in European and American country. Besides that, Professor Frank Wells also indirectly contribute to my career because he initiates the Global Studies Program in University FISIPUB in cooperation with JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban. And unfortunately, I am one of the alumni of that program. So
congratulations.
Yeah, so I really appreciate to the idea because of this program. This is an innovative program that's truly globalized, and give us a more insight, not only in the perspective of global north, but also global south in many different continents. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Wells to deliver your keynotes for 30 minutes because we delay the sessions 10 minutes. So maybe we will extend some the time. Okay, Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your nice introduction. Definitely, we should talk later about this Global Studies Program. I'm curious, in a special session. I'm really excited. I'm glad that I'm invited to your conference in your country. I'd like to make 3 remarks in advance before I start my official lecture. And the first thing is, as Jeffrey already said, what is my link to your country, to your society? It's not so big, it's small. I never visited Indonesia so far, but my link was to New Delhi in India. So I traveled often to India. I even offered a talk now in India. So I'm a little bit familiar with India, but not at all with your country. So therefore I have to say what I'm outlining here in a sketch. It's a sketch about the situation that Jeffrey already explained. It's a short sketch, and it's my sketch, and it's of course from my view, from the European point of view, and it's not only Indonesia. And later on we can compare. So it's a perspective from elsewhere. I don't claim to explain your circumstances, of course. And by the way, I found out, and my country is only 3% of your country, so it's a small contribution. The virus, what does the virus change? I mean, for sociologists, there are structures in society, but not a small virus cannot change society, of course, But I think this small virus from Wuhan in China, he taught us that the world is connected. We are globally connected because of the global itinerary of the virus. The pandemic also offers me partly my topic of today, because it's obvious that countries and people should collaborate to defend themselves against the virus. So in a way, collaboration is required and solidarity is needed. And that's my problem. That is my problem of today, and it's our problem. Where is solidarity? Where has it gone? I mean, it's continuously a core question of sociology. So I come to sociology. What is the role of sociology in that? In my point of view, the global Great Recession of 2009. In this Great Recession, now it's possibly the Great Lockdown, and earlier 2009 was a Great Recession, financial crisis, so-called Great Recession. It taught us that things are related. Things are related on this globe. We live in an interconnected world. Situation, economic situation here is related to situation there. So things are related. We live in the same world. And this is my conviction that the task and the role of sociology is exactly decoding this puzzle. The world is connected, we live in the same world, and it's so complex, no one can understand it, but it's a job of sociology decoding this puzzle. My third remark is the future. This is my topic, because I'm asking, can a virus trigger a future better society? Why do I speak about the future? In my opinion, sociology and social science is mainly caught in the present. We talk about the present, but not about the future. And as a philosopher, Hegel, German philosopher, George Hegel taught us, and I believed in this sentence, what he taught us all my life so far, but now I'm changing. He said, the oil of Minerva, the Greek oil, spreads its wings only with the falling of the dusk. Only in the evening, when the day is over, then social science begins its work and thinks about reality. So when things are done, when the present has become past, then we think about society. So we look back. This is the main structure of our worldview, in my understanding. But now we should also, we need collaboration, we need solidarity, we need, how can we get a more sustainable society in the future? So from this reflections, I come to my problem. And so far, as you know, in the economic crisis of the 70s, the understanding of it, the outcome was that sociology did no longer talk about Parsons, modernity, modernization. It was over, it was the end of modernity. There was no future. This famous fellow Fukuyama, he said, there's an end of history, end of history. And now, after the Great Recession of 2008, we learned, no, there is no end. Things must change. There is history, and it's in our to look forward to the future. Can there be a more sustainable society in the future? I think it's also concerns your the theme of your conference, Re-Narrating Inequality and arguing or discussing social justice in Asia. I would offer you a short overview of my paper. I have some slides. I think I should offer my screen, or are the slides in? I offer my screen. Only a short overview, and then I go back to my talking mode. Are my slides there? Probably not. Oh,
Yes.
They are there. They are there in big.
Yes.
Okay.
That is quite clear.
Okay. Okay. This is my title of my paper. Talk about social theory. But I'm concerned with this very simple question. It's a sketch, and then we can discuss. And now I'm quoting a critical theorist, Theodor Adorno. He wrote, human beings are above all and without exception, not yet themselves. Sociologists usually do not talk about in this language, it's a outdated language, it's strange, and what does it mean? We are looking back to the past and analyzing it, what happened, what are the structures. But here this fellow is saying, human beings, how we collaborate in this world, which world did we fabricate, So this is not yet a world of social justice as we are dreaming about. We are not yet ourselves, though human beings should become human beings in future. So this is my topic of the future. And the question is, the virus, social distancing, physical distancing, will the virus has an impact on our practices in society that in the long term possibly will change our practices. Yeah? Now, finally, my overview of my paper. I have 4 chapters. I introduce you to the theme searching for solidarity. And then I make it very simple. I differentiate in Europe, and possibly United States, the Keynesian welfare, the post-war welfare state, the golden age of capitalism until mid-70s. And then the neoliberal capitalism, possibly it's not so different in your country, the liberalization period, which lasts in my country, in Europe, until now, of course. And then I will discuss a central point relating the future, the so-called post-corona. What will happen post-corona? Are we on the track in a better, more sustainable future where social justice will be given? So this is a short overview. 2 main periods of capitalism, and then looking forward to the future. So now I'm back. I prefer seeing people and not my slides. So I'm back here. My introduction first, searching for solidarity. For this chapter, I'm anchored in social theory. So you expect I should talk on social theory, and I refer to this time to French social theory, to classical theorists and to more or less contemporary theorists. My classical one is Durkheim, Emile Durkheim. My more or less, but also already dead, contemporary theorist is Michel Foucault. Both are French thinkers from Paris. So my first thinker is Durkheim. I think in India he belongs to the Holy Trinity on the reading list, classical sociology. So I think it's possibly also in your country, classical thinker of sociology. Durkheim said, as all of us know, of course, he positioned sociology against philosophy. Philosophy is too abstract. It derives conclusions deductively. We have to work more empirically. We explain social phenomena by empirical methods. We look to the world. Durkheim also argued against economics. Economics suffers by beginning and ending its explanations with individuals. Only with individuals. Individuals are endowed with beliefs and opinions, and this should be the anchor point of the world. Sociologists think different. There are structures around, there are conditions. So sociology for Durkheim, he argues for sociology. Social phenomena must be explained. And the core leading question, I think, although Durkheim is quite old and you could say it's outdated and too structuralist, today there's more Nietzsche and so on. But I think his core question about modernity, and he said, this is my core question of my book on the division of labor. The core question, I think it's still valid and very good. And it applies to my society, but also to yours. I think it's a very good question. I like this question. The core question is, in his preface, is how does it come about that the individual, whilst becoming more autonomous, depends ever more closely upon society? I think it's very good. For instance, this popular, even possibly famous German sociologist Ulrich Beck, and he has a very popular book, Risk Society. I don't know whether it's also known in your country, but Risk Society, he talks about individualization. Many people talk about individualization. All of us talk about individualization and autonomy. It's very easy to talk about, but Durkheim has both questions together. And therefore he's a classical author, a big author, which stand on his shoulders. How does it come about that the individual, whilst becoming more autonomous, All of us talk about it, very easy, becoming more individual. But at the same moment, we are depend ever more closely upon society. Both goes hand in hand, becoming more individual and depending more closely on society. How can I understand this? Both together, you know, this is a very good question of Durkheim. And now, as you know, his distinction, I mean, this is no longer to be applied to your country, society, or to mine. It's quite old, but his distinction was pre-modern and modern. You know, in pre-modern, there was no division of labor, and modern, it's simply division of labor. Pre-modern society is segmented in small groups. Small groups of people are hanging around together, working together. And modern society is differentiated, no longer segmented in small, identical, similar groups, but differentiated because there are so many jobs on the job market. I mean, I think 280 million of people, they do different things in Indonesia. And Durkheim's question was, and it is a core question, how do these people stick together, hang together, build solidarity? And he said, in the former mode of society where people live together in small groups, are doing the same things, are working on the same field, people are like each other, and they, in my understanding, they develop automatically solidarity because they do the same things. In my opinion, also as we see here, we are academics, we are reading, we are lecturing, writing, we do the same thing. Usually we have a very good understanding. We talk 5 minutes and we share a cup of coffee and we feel good and we are doing the same. So automatically solidarity is built among people who do the same. Unfortunately, in society, people do so things and there is no longer understanding. So Durkheim's point is contacts are constituting morality, you know, solidarity sui generic. He called it mechanical solidarity. I call it automatic. It's automatically built solidarity. So in modern society, we have more problems. And when I was a student, I learned in school, so to say, I learned how does modern society produce solidarity? And I learned it's organic solidarity. Why? Because I know I'm dependent on the bakery and on the farmer and bus driver. Without the bus driver, I could not reach my university. I could walk to my university, it's not so far. So people are, 9 million Austrians are dependent on each other, and because of that, it's a rational solidarity with them because I'm dependent on them. In my if we live amorally, nation states, only functionally. Of them are Austrians, so stick together. But on the world level, in Europe or in the world, there is only functional integration, no longer this mechanical integration. So this is Durkheim, and although it's so old, I still think in the Keynesian welfare state that was developed in Europe, you know, until the mid-70s, it was still people lived in this mode. They thought we are equals, we live in the same society, we invest in education for all, we open universities for female scholars. So, but what happened then? And I think this second period, what happened then, this possibly we share between here and at your place. my second period is already my chapter 3, the neoliberal period of capitalism. I say it's starting about 1980 and it lasts till today. And my lens on that is, of course, also a structural lens. It's from Michel Foucault. He outlined that in his late lectures. And the interesting point is with Foucault, this is no longer just an economic analysis of capitalism, but the economy has some impact on culture, how we understand the world, what we are doing in this world. This is a very interesting point of Foucault. And his thesis is liberal governmentality, a form of state politics. So what is a feature of this post-welfare state politics? For Foucault, in the neoliberal capitalism, and I say it's lasts till today, you know, the state outsources responsibility, yeah, and puts it on the shoulders of the individuals. That's a new thing. So the state is no longer disciplining its people, but it's uses these people as self-responsibility. We care for groups, we care for all female, we open universities. And now we outsource this responsibility on the shoulders of each individual person. So it's a new mode of, it's no longer top-down governing, but bottom-up. If there's a problem, I don't say I organize pension for all, I say save for your pension. Even this sentence you can find in Foucault's writings. So in Foucault, this is a government through self-government. It's a bit strange to understand, but it's no longer the government from Washington or Berlin, it's governing from bottom up, you know. And so it's, and I think this is our main argument, what he applies. For me, sociology's main argument is society shapes subjectivity. That's the point, you know, and exactly this, he's outlining this. Yeah. He says, now this mode of the human capital, the economic man, is seen, considered elsewhere, everywhere in society. Society expects from people that they look after themselves. Yeah. So all in all, Foucault is saying, under a society where implanted everywhere, everything falls under marketization, economization, even the health systems, everything, education, everything is marketized, you know. In this world, responsibility of society falls and the activation of people is pushed. Yeah, that's the core thing. If you like to have a mot about that, Margaret Thatcher, usually referred as an icon of neoliberal change in the world, you know, on the globe. Margaret Thatcher, she said, the method is economic, but the object is to change the soul. You know, so neoliberal capitalism is not only an economic system, it fits to how we understand the world, what we are doing, how we shape subjectivities, how ourselves are shaped in this world. And Thatcher said explicitly, it's this new, what we are doing, what we are inaugurating is changing the souls of the people. And I think it worked very well. The souls of the people are changed. Ronald Reagan, friend of Margaret Thatcher, he said, economic policy must seek to create a climate that encourages the development of private institutional conducive to individual responsibility and initiative, own activities, own achievements. So this is a new thing. In my society, in Europe, even more in the British society, United Kingdom, but also of course in US, very much. I don't know whether in your country, but here it's a very strong thing. There's even a book from a business professor in Germany. He wrote a book on optimization of baby management. So when people are under the push or the impact of society, when they are urged to care for yourself, the state, society is no longer caring for you. When you are unemployed, do a better education, study English, learn Chinese language, look for yourselves. If this is a mode how society is governed, then you care also about your kids. You try to get your kids to a good school. You put them to a private school. You are working very hard. And when you read this book, Optimization of Baby Management, you can learn. You should even select very careful the first name of your kid, because some first name indicate a lower position in society. So you should carefully look for a good first name. And you should also carefully consider in which area of the city you are living. There are good schools and not so good schools. So optimization of baby management. Yeah, this did not exist in my society in Germany in the 60s, 70s. I'm absolutely sure, but it exists today. People care about their kids and like to invest in them. They are accumulating human capital even in the kids to get them a better position in society. So it's very strong, And by the way, it's also very strong in the academy. I think Western academics, hopefully not you, according to your conference, not because you are talking about social justice, and you care about this, you care about too much inequality, you care about social justice, so you are working hand in hand together for education as a public good. Thanks God that you are doing that. But in Western academy, it's full of the academic self-entrepreneur. People care, even academics, they care about themselves, but not because they are bad people with bad values, but because the system shapes subjectivities and urges them, You have to apply to project funding. There are so many precarious academic careers. There is no tenure track. For most of them, 80% are no longer on tenure tracks. They don't have permanent jobs. So they have to care themselves, apply for funding, do this. They have to specialize. They cannot care about society, what is good for society. They have to care about themselves. Academic self-entrepreneur.
Professor, you have 5 minutes left. So I have,
5 minutes, okay. Okay, so I come to my conclusion more or less in this chapter. So earlier there was a welfare capitalism. Now we have neoliberal capitalism. Earlier there was social responsibility. Now we have self-governed individuals, me incorporated. Earlier you learned a profession. Now you pursue a career. Earlier we had curative healthcare. We built hospitals. Now we have preventive healthcare. We say we delegate responsibility to you. It's individual responsibility to care about your health. So, final chapter, the neoliberal in the horizon, which will be a better, more sustainable future. Is it possible? And I have a very short sketch in 3 lines: economy, social infrastructure, and practices, our self-practices. In economy, of course, we see there is a worldwide and return of the state. Yeah, even the previously main actor of the neoliberal capitalism, the International Monetary Fund, now no longer supports austerity. And it's a crucial question what it will do in the future and how it will go in Europe also in the future. I think it will go the wrong way. I mean, I'm only saying it will go the wrong way. I could elaborate on Europe. Will there be a European New Deal? It will not be. It's not there. Yeah, so I'm very skeptical on the economy. Second, social infrastructure. Private versus public healthcare. Do we think that ours are caring about patients in a way or about individuals? I think the virus makes that society in a way calls for investing in infrastructure, caring for patients, caring for all people. I'm not saying care for yourself, buy a mask and wear it, you know. But I see the counterforce, and the counterforce is the neoliberal mantra. Each person, each country cares for itself. We see it in vaccination. In Africa, you know, there's 2 less vaccines. So this is a question here. I see even when we are calling, society is calling in TV, we are saying we should be solidarical, people should collaborate, and we should care about the care workers more, we should offer them a better wage. And I think even in this call for solidarity in society, I see that solidarity is not there. There's a lack of social public responsibility and care. So I come to my third line, and this is my last point, you know. And I think for me, this is, as a sociologist, the main dimension that we should talk about and analyze and consider in the future. What will the future more sustainable society come? Will our self-practices of people, 9 million Austrians and 280 million people in your country, will their self-practices change under the structures that are implanted in our society? First, the structures are not changing so very much. So how can our self-practices change? Not so easy. The society still offers us to struggle for survival. No, it's still this neoliberal world where you care for yourself, and your kids and your house and no one else. And I see it, this opinion, this attitude, this self-practice is still very strongly there in my society. We have people, they are against the mask, you know, and they are against vaccination because, in my opinion, it's not because they are too less educated and don't understand and they are not good in their head. I think it's because we are educated and trained to live as an individual person. I care for myself and my kids and no one else, you know. And now the state comes and say, wear a mask. I don't do this, you know. No one cares for me. I have to care for my own survival. So I see a threat to the individual freedom. Yeah. So, and I see still the Foucauldian argument that responsibility is delegated from the social, from community to the individual self. And now we have selves, they see threats to their individual freedom. And even vaccination and mask, they think, oh my God, my freedom, I'm here, I have to care, I have to struggle for my survival. No one cares for me. You know, I'm unemployed. No one cares. They don't offer me a job. So they don't offer good education to my people. So I have to care for myself. And I'm alienated from the rest of society. So I still see this.
Okay, Professor's time up. I think it's unfortunately.
Okay, I stop here. You know, it's
yeah.
Okay. So I'm skeptical about the future. No, I try to make a sketch, but I'm skeptical. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Professor Frank Wells. That's very interesting talks, and I think like most sociologists agree if we have to be skeptical to unrevealing some hidden injustice that's blatantly practices, especially as you mentioned that the shifting from the Bretton Woods capitalism to the Washington Consensus neoliberal capitalism. That's the make society as the Homo economicus. That's they care and commercializing their lives for accumulating capitals. So your focus is to seeking the solidarity in this circumstance that's nearly impossible to reach the sustainable society, because like there are 3 points, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the economic that's are reconfigured or dominated by the global financial institution like IMF or bank with the imposing austerity policy, and this may change that in we don't know what, and maybe it's more dangerous than before. And the second is the social infrastructure. We have to like invest in more in public healthcare. And but the challenge is more people are more individualized to take care of themselves rather than like prioritizing the public. And the final is like sub practices where the people have to change how this self practicing society can gain back the what Durkheim said, the organic solidarity, which is nearly impossible. But I think in the situations of Indonesia, people in here are already like acknowledge that after democratizations and the authoritarian rules are falling down, temporary democratization are running well, but in last decade, we facing what we call the fragmented society because of political difference choice. That is a challenging also for society in Indonesia. It's not only in Europe, because as you mentioned, that we now live in the interconnected world. So I think we share such vulnerability, but maybe we have a little bit a different picture of that vulnerability. So I think it's important to ask audience in here if they have any questions. There will be 2 stages of Q&A sessions. In each session is for 2 or 3 questions. And now I would like to invite audience to whether they can write down their questions to the chat box, or they can raise their hand to pose a question directly to the professor. Maybe, please, participant, if you have some questions. There's one.
I see one hand. Yeah.
Yeah, Umi Ratningsih. Maybe we collect 3 questions, and after that, I will give the professor the opportunity to answer. Anyone else? Okay. I think Professor, she write down in the chat box about pandemic situation tend to marginalize unlucky people, since online teaching and learning need a device and facilities like laptop, desktop, handphone, quota, internet, and etc. Fortunately, quite many unlucky students and parents still have social capital, such as perseverance, resilience, solidarity, care, and any stuff. What are the best actions should we and government have to cope with this pandemic? Maybe you can read this question. And the second questions come from Madam. Oh no. Okay. Maybe Professor, you can answer these questions first. And
okay, the first question. I think it's a very good question I can think about, and I should better ask you what you think. I think, yes, we are sitting at home, and my students are also complaining. It makes them a little bit depressed, you know, being at home for 1.5 years. I mean, I am well connected, but when you are a young student of 22 years and you are not so well connected, you are new in the city and there's no one. So on the one hand, these are exactly what we should do. Societal circumstances, structures are not good for developing solidarical links and connections to other people under Corona, under this COVID pandemic, of course, you know. And therefore you are asking, but what should we do nevertheless? Yeah. And of course, the good sign was at the very beginning, there was some solidarity in society. We have to care for the elderly. Even in my house, there are think we should help, you know. So the virus changed something at the very beginning. Yeah. And you are asking, what are the best actions that we should do? This is an open question. This is the future. Yeah, we should discuss more. I just say one thing, but it offers a big picture here. And I don't know.
Questions? If not, maybe I have a question for you, Professor, about the solidarity or the social cohesions we call it. As we know that COVID-19 like attracts some attention in debates about the power and how governments like Agamben's arguments that states use the pandemic to declare a state emergency in order to expand their rule to limit the restrictions of individuals, while some others see that this kind of limitations is not the kind of strategy of government to limit the peoples, but to save lives. Okay, in these two competing view, do you see any inequality or social injustice are neglected from, whether people are have to believe whether governments do good for saving people, or they just use COVID as a pretext to become more powerful? So what neglected is like society, the response about resistance to this strategy anticipation for COVID are one thing as to repress the democracy or the freedom of people. That's what do you think in terms of social theory? Thank you.
You offer it very nicely, and you prepare already the structure of the question so good. So global studies was a good education for you, I see. So very good. Very good question, but very tough question and difficult. And as I outlined before, as you felt, I have a skeptical worldview on that. I'm very optimistic with students, and I'm motivated, and I'm so motivated with people. But on the long term, in the big picture, I'm very skeptical because of sociological reasons. So I'm pessimist, but not so much pessimist as Agamben. I don't. Possibly he's right, but I don't see this that the state is misusing everything now. This and so. Because my feeling was, possibly naive, but my feeling was people care, they care about you and me and about the elderly who got the virus and who are in the home and so. I think it sounded good, so people care about 9 million Austrians. But I think the background is also, if you don't care about them, they will bring the virus to you. So it's simply a fact that we are dependent on each other. We are not so much dependent. I must not care about the 90 years old person. Why should I care about him? But now I must care, because if not, the virus will come from him back to me, let's say to the care worker, and from the care worker to the shop, and from the shop to me. So I think it's the state government was really factually caring for people, and even the mask. I agree to wearing the mask. I'm not saying my freedom and so, because I think it's better for the other people, So I see it not so bad as Agamben is doing it, But nevertheless, as I outlined before, when I see to the long-term development, to the structures in which we are embedded, I cannot see the way out. I see now, there's climate change in these things. Fridays for Future is very popular here. Of course, if people agree on the same interpretation of the world, and I think it's a job of sociology to exactly discuss these things. We should not be so much specialized and fragmented. We should discuss the big picture and these big issues, and possibly people, by thinking, by discussing, by analyzing sociologically, we can find some consensus in society. I mean, I cannot really believe in this, but I think this is what we should do as sociologists. A little bit go back to the big picture and discuss these important questions, as you do. You talk about social justice, the big questions, the important things. You know?
Okay, that's a very good response, I think. And I think we still have sometimes, if some people still have questions, please. If not, I will ask again. We still have, I think, like 5 to 8 or 10 minutes.
I see one question there.
10 minutes left. Wait. Okay, Astrida Fitriani, please, maybe you can like open the cam and ask directly to the professor. And please make it brief and concise. Please, Miss Astrida.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. It is a pleasure to meet you too, Mr. Jeffrey and Professor Wells in this conference. And I would like to ask a question. This is actually a question of my colleagues, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, according to you, since your expertise is also in social theory, what is the homework, or rather, what is the contribution and application of social theory in order to solve current day humanity problems? Because social theories are originally created in order to somehow enable humans to see their social problems and social life problems and put them into perspective. So basically, that's all my question. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to ask the question.
Okay, thank you. Please, Professor.
Thank you.
Very good question. I like this question, you know, because I'm in the social theory, sociological theory. Sometimes it's the same, you know. Some people have the understanding that social theory is it's from the 19th century. You know, it's outdated. You don't need it. You need empirical research, and you are doing research very carefully about this fact and that thing, and so how events relate to each other. But I think now we can see that social theory, sociological theory, is more important than ever before. Possibly as important as it was in its offspring, take off in the 19th century. But now again, because theory, the role of theory is what theory should do, and where we need it is how things are related to each other. It's a very simple thing. It's not men with a white beard, old, you know, it's how are things related? How is the economic situation, and how is our self-practices in the streets of Malang, of Indonesia, related to the economic role of Indonesia in the system, you know? So all these things are related, and no one talks about that. What even my media, we have, in a way, we have quite good newspapers also, you know, we call them, they are good, but mainly the media are covering politicians and what they are doing, what they are wearing, their clothes, and whether they are good friends with this and that. But the structures of the world that shapes our life and our practices, no one can explain them. It's also too difficult, you know. Then we are blaming this politician, we are blaming that politician, we are blaming people, migrants, this and that, you know. But how things are related, we are thinking, we are discussing here in my country, should we accept more migrants or not, you know? But we should, of course, sociologists, we should discuss about what are the causes of migration and how can we change that, how can we produce a better life in all countries and so on. So how things are related, for this you need a theory. Which structures, which mechanisms are behind the things? And I think, in my understanding, is there are societal structures and mechanisms, you know, they are not visible, they are not observable. We can even not measure them in facts, but they are operating behind. And our job is discovering them, you know, and analyzing them. Which relations operate in society that produce this social phenomena? And developing a common understanding of this, a shared understanding, then we could think about what could we do in this world to make it a little bit more sustainable. But so I think now in these difficult problems, theory is more needed than ever before.
Okay. Maybe another question. We still have one spare time for the one question, a final question, I think. Okay, Ayu Kusuma Stuti, please, on cam, and also please post directly your questions to the professor.
All right. Hello, Frank. How are you?
Hello, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. All right. Yeah, this is a fascinating presentation, and I see that about the concept of solidarity. But Turkim, I see that you mentioned about automatic solidarity, and I think it's new, it's novel, and I think it's really good to see that it's different from mechanic and also organic solidarity. Could you explain in detail, Frank, about this automatic solidarity? So this is new concept for me, and I think you could explain in detail what actually the automatic solidarity. Yeah.
I mean, I think it was a bit to explain it in a more easy way. Automatic, of course, in social life, there's no automation, you know, of course. Durkheim calls it mechanic. This means because people cope with each other. When people work together, like in a family, when we live in a family, we have so many interactions. And because of these interactions, according to Durkheim, morality is not our morals, our morality, our understanding about human beings, morality, ethics, you know, this does not come from God or from the teacher. It comes from our interactions, our practices, you know, and when we live together with the elderly in the same house, with my kids, with my neighbor, though, if you cope with them so often, you know, then you share the same worldview. I mean, we can see this everywhere. So, and from this point of view, if people do the same things at a similar place, they work together on a field. They are dependent on planting on the field. You know, they live in the same village. They need the same water source. You know, if all these things are similar and identical and they share this, in this world, solidarity is developed mechanically. You know, it's just there. You know, it's not a complicated construct. It's just there because of these practices. And I say it's automatically, it's developed. If you offer this kind of, if you bring all our kids kindergarten, you know, 50 kids together and let them play soccer every day, they develop friendships, of course, simply because everything is the same. They are happy about each other. So automatically, I would say solidarity and social responsibility is developed. And the opposite is the big society. People are so different, you know, there is no, the super rich in the world, they don't need the poor. Earlier in the 19th century, the super rich, he needed the poor because they worked in his fabrik, but now you no longer need them, you know, so we have a big problem in society. I would be curious to listen to all your talks. I could not yesterday, unfortunately, because what are you discussing? You are discussing all this over 2 days. In spring this year, I did university seminar with my student group, and we discussed with a group in India and with a group in South Africa. I mean, now we can do this because of Zoom, you know, so possibly I should think about this, doing it with you, discussing in class or with scholars about these issues more longer than now. But thank you very much for your invitation. It's great. Unfortunately, I heard too less from your side because of the structure of the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Professor Frank Wells, for your very fascinating and enlightening talks. And I think the last question, Price, maybe sum up today's talks about the searching for solidarity, maybe in the context of Europe, as you said, but there are still a wide gap in Indonesia, especially about solidarity during the COVID, as many people are seemingly individualized their life, but in another spectrum, like in online life or virtual life, they are like solidarity, show solidarity with some other people through, you know, like online donations and some others. And maybe this kind of phenomena will, you know, like encourage sociologists in Indonesia to like conduct some kinds of theorizing the social practice in Indonesia during the COVID. And yeah, maybe this also will advancing the social theory in Indonesia as well. And maybe Professor Van Wells can continue and sustains the collaboration or cooperation with university in Indonesia to, like develop the social theory by contextualizing in the social reality in this country. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, we came to the end of part of our sessions. I would like once again to thanks for Professor Van Wells for your time and also the audience for the active participations. And I believe we can benefit from this talks and we can advance our knowledge for, for reproducing new knowledge in the social theory. And that's all. I think I would like to say thank you and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
And
for
hope
committee
to see
also.
you again another time.
Yeah, sure, Professor. We have to discuss maybe.
Yeah, you should write to me and then we create a video conference. I would like to talk to you.
Sure. A lot of GSP also in Indonesia. So. Yeah, please host. Maybe the floor is yours. Host. Yeah.
Wells and Mr. Devry for the engaging discussion. And after this, we will have the third and last parallel session of this conference. And unlike before, we will divide this session into 4 breakout rooms in which participants will present their paper. And for the participants, again, please change your name into the following format: panel number, space, full name, as the committee writes on the chat column. And please follow the instruction. If you have any difficulties or question, you can always ask the help desk in the main room. And we want to introduce the panel of this parallel session. Panel 1 with the theme Social and Political Transformation will be moderated by Pantri Mutiarana Erza Kilian, SIP MEF. And panel 2 with the theme Political Institution, Social Movement and Activism in Indonesia will be moderated by Mr. Rido Imawan Hanafi from National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. Panel 3 with the theme Social Resilience in Times of the Pandemic will be moderated by Mr. Lutfi Amiruddin MSc. And the last panel, panel 4 with the theme Rural Studies and Local Wisdom will be moderated by Dr. Muhammad Anas S.Phil M.Phil. And thank you. Please join your room by clicking on join button. And for participants who wants to spectate the presentation, you can always choose the panel that you want by clicking on join button. And if you have any difficulties, do not hesitate to ask the help desk in the main room. Thank you.
this time I feel there's no one to save me. This all or nothing really got a way of driving me crazy. I need somebody to heal, somebody to know, somebody to have, somebody to hold. It's easy to say, but it's never the same. I guess I kinda like the way you numbed all the pain. Now the day bleeds into nightfall, and you're not here to get me through it all. I let my guard down, then you pulled the rug. I was getting kinda used to being someone you loved. I'm going under, and this time I feel there's no one to turn to. This all or nothing way of loving got me sleeping without you. I need somebody to know, somebody to heal, somebody to have, just to know how it feels. It's easy to say, but it's never the same. I guess I kinda like the way you helped me escape. Now the day bleeds into nightfall, and you're not here to get me through it all. I let my guard down, then you pulled the rug. I was getting kinda used to being someone you loved. And I tend to close my eyes when it hurts. Sometimes I fall into your arms. I'll be safe in your sound till I come back around. For now the day bleeds into nightfall, and you're not here to get me through it all. I let my guard down, and then you pulled the rug. I was getting kinda used to being someone you loved, but now the day bleeds into nightfall, and you're not here to get me through it all. I let my guard down, then you pulled the rug. I was getting kinda used to being someone you loved. I let my guard down, then you pulled the rug. I was getting kinda used to being someone you loved. I remember the day, even wrote down the day that I fell for you. Now it's crossed out and red, but I still can't forget if I wanted to. And it's drive me insane, think I'm hearing your name everywhere I go. But it's all in my head, it's just all in my head. But you won't see me break, call you up in 3 days. I'll send you a bouquet, saying it's a mistake. Dream my troubles away, one more glass of champagne. And you know, I'm the first to say that I'm not perfect, and you're the first to say you want a best day. But now I know a perfect way to let you go. Give my last hello, hope it's worth it. Here's a perfect, and that's all just fine. How I try to be great for you. I'm fooled by design, and you love to remind me no matter what I do. But you won't see me break, call you up in 3 days. I'll send you a bouquet, saying it's a mistake. Drink my troubles away, one more glass of champagne. And you know, I'm the first to say that I'm not perfect, and you're the first to say you want the best thing. But now I know the perfect way to let you go. Give my last hello, hope it's worth it. I'm the first to say that I'm not perfect, and you're the first to say you want the best thing. But now I know a perfect way to let you go. Give my last hello, hope it's worth it. Say yeah.
shallow. Hope it's worth it. Here's your perfect.
You have my heart, we'll never be worlds apart. Maybe in magazines, but you'll still be my star. Baby, 'cause in the dark, you can't see shiny cars. That's when you'll need me there. With you I'll always share. Because when the sun shines, we'll shine together. Told you I'll be here forever. Said I'd always be a friend. Took a note, I'ma stick it out till the end. Now that it's raining more than ever, know that we still have each other. You can stand under my umbrella. You can stand under my umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey, hey. Under my umbrella, Ella, Ella, hey, hey. These fancy things will never come in between. You're part of my entity, here for infinity. When the world has took its part, when the world has dealt its cards, if the hand is hard, together we'll mend your heart. Because when the sun shines, we'll shine together. Told you I'll be here forever. Said I'd always be a friend. Took a note, I'ma stick it out till the end. Now that it's raining more than ever, know that we still have each other. You can stand under my umbrella. You can stand under my umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey, hey. Under my umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey. You can run into my arms. It's okay, don't be alarmed. Come into me, there's no distance in between our love. I'm gonna let the rain pour. I'll be all you need and more. Because when the sun shines, we'll shine together. Told you I'll be here forever. Said I'd always be a friend. Took a note, I'ma stick it out till the end. Now that it's raining more than ever, know that we'll still have each other. You can stand under my umbrella. You can stand under my umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey, hey. Under my umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey. You can stand under my umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey, hey. Under my umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey.
Don't go tonight. Just stay here one more time. Remind me what it's like. Oh, and let's fall in love one more time. I need you now by my side. It tears me up when you turn me down. I'm begging, please, just stick around. I'm sorry, don't leave me. I want If you ever leave me, baby, leave some morphine at my door, 'cause it will take a whole lot of medication to realize what we used to have. We don't have it anymore. There's no religion that could save me, no matter how long my knees are on the floor. Oh, so keep in mind all the sacrifices I'm making to keep you by my side, to keep you from walking out the door. 'Cause there'll be no sunlight if I lose you, baby. There'll be no clear sky if I lose you, baby. Just like the clouds, my eyes will do the same if you walk away. Every day it will rain, rain, rain. I'll never be your mother's favorite. Your daddy can't even look me in the eye. Ooh, if I was in their shoes, I'll be doing the same thing. Saying there goes my little boy, working with that troublesome guy. But they're just afraid of something they can't understand. Oh, my little darling, watch me change my mind. And for you I'll try, I'll try, I'll try, I'll try, yeah. I'll pick up these broken pieces, still I'm bleeding. If that'll make you mine, 'cause there'll be no sunlight if I lose you, baby. There'll be no clear sky if I lose you, baby. Just like the clouds, my eyes will do the same if you walk away. Every day it will rain, rain, rain. Oh. Oh, don't you say goodbye. Don't you say goodbye. I'll pick up these broken pieces, still I'm bleeding. If that'll make it right, 'cause there'll be no sunlight if I lose you, baby. And there'll be no clear sky if I lose you, baby. And just like the clouds, my eyes will do the same if you walk away.
Tell me what you're crying for. I'll wipe your tears, oh love. If your soul is aching, love will comfort you for sure. If we're caught in a wave, I will carry you over. It don't matter where you are, I'll run to your front door. And when my head goes in different directions, you know my heart's never on the move. And in the dark times, you don't have to question if I'm 100 with you. You can put an ocean between our love, love, love. It won't keep us apart. You could build a wall, I would run it up, 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 just to get to your heart. If we're caught in a wave, then baby we'll make a way. You could put an ocean between our love, love, love. It won't keep us apart. Play on idle hands, I lose myself, I do. But I found my way to velvet sands, I'll crash right into you. If we're caught in a wave, I will carry you over. It don't matter where we are, you're still the one I choose. And when my head goes in different directions, you know my heart's never on the move. And in the dark times, you don't have to question if I'm 100 with you. You could put an ocean between our love, love, love. It won't keep us apart. You could build a wall, I would run it up, 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 just to get to your heart. If we're caught in a wave, then baby we'll make a way. You could put an ocean between our love, love, love. It won't keep us apart.
Something must have gone wrong in my brain. Got your chemicals all in my veins. Feeling all the highs, feeling all the pain. Let go on the wheel, it's the bullet lane. Now I'm seeing red, not thinking straight. Blurring all the lines, you intoxicate me. Just like nicotine, heroin, morphine. Suddenly I'm a fiend and you're all I need, all I need. Yeah, you're all I need. It's you, babe, and I'm a sucker for the way that you move, babe. And I could try to run, but it would be useless. You're to blame. Just one hit and you'll know I'll never be the same. It's you, babe, and I'm a sucker for the way that you move, babe. And I could try to run, but it would be useless. You're to blame. Just one hit and you'll know I'll never, ever, ever be the same. I'll never be the same. I'll never be the same. I'll never be the same. Sneaking in LA when the lights are low. All for one touch, I could overdose. He said stop playing it safe, girl, I wanna see you lose control. Just just like nicotine, heroin, morphine. Suddenly I'm a fiend and you're all I need, all I need. Yeah, you're all I need. It's you, babe, and I'm a sucker for the way that you move, babe. And I could try to run, but it would be useless. You're to blame. Just one hit and you'll know I'll never be the same. It's you, babe, and I'm a sucker for the way that you move, babe. And I could try to run, but it would be useless. You're to blame. Just one hit and you'll know I'll never, ever, ever be the same. I'll never be the same. I'll never be the same. I'll never be the same.
Light 'em up, tell me where you were, tell me where you were. Summer nights, bright lights, and the shooting stars, they break my heart. Calling you now, but you're not picking up. Shadows are close, if that's still enough. Light a march, baby, in the dark. Show me where you were. How I miss you every single day when I see you on those streets. Oh, love, tell me there's a river I can swim that will bring you back to me. 'Cause I don't know how to love someone else. I don't know how to forget your face. Oh, love, God, I miss you every single day now, so far away. It's breaking me, losing you. We were far from perfect, but we were worth it. Too many fights, and we cried, but never said we're sorry. Stop saying you love me, calling me now, but I can't pick up. Your side are still close, and I'm still alive. The summer's over now, but somehow still break my heart. We could have this time. Oh, love, how I miss you every single day when I see you on those streets. Oh, love, tell me there's a river I can swim that will bring you back to me. 'Cause I don't know how to love someone else. I don't know how to forget your face. Oh, love, God, I miss you every single day now, so far away. So far away. Oh, love, how I miss you every single day when I see you on those streets. Oh, love, tell me there's a river I can swim that will bring you back to me. 'Cause I don't know how to love someone else. I don't know how to forget your face. Oh, love, God, I miss you every single day now, so far away.
But you'll never be alone. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Not trying to be in there, not trying to be cool, just trying to be in this. Tell me, are you too? Can you feel where the wind is? Can you feel it through all of the windows inside this room? 'Cause I wanna touch you, baby, and I wanna feel you too. And I wanna see the sunrise and your sins, just me and you. Light it up on the run. Let's make love tonight. But you'll never be alone. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. hold you when things go wrong. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. Like a jacket, so would do yours in. We would roll down the rapids to find a wave that fits. Can you feel where the wind is? Can you feel it through all of the windows inside this room? 'Cause I wanna touch you, baby, and I wanna feel you too. And I wanna see the sunrise and your sins, just me and you. Light it up on the run. Let's make love tonight. But you'll never be alone. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. I'll hold you when things go wrong. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. Could give love to your body, so only you that can stop it. Gonna give love to your body, ooh. But you'll never be alone. From dusk till dawn. With you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. I'll hold you when things go wrong. I will. With you from dusk till dawn. Till dawn. With you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here.
So look me in the eyes, tell me what you see. Perfect paradise, tearing at the seams. I wish I could escape. I don't wanna fake it. Wish I could erase it, make you hard believe, but I'm a bad liar, bad liar. Now you know, now you know that I'm a bad liar, bad liar. Now you know you're free to go. Oh hush my fear, it's been difficult years, and terrorists don't prey on innocent victim. Trust me, darling, trust me, darling. It's been a loveless years. I'm a man of three fears: integrity, faith, and crocodile tears. Oh, trust me, darling, trust me, darling. So look me in the eyes, tell me what you see. Perfect paradise, tearing at the seams. I wish I could escape. I don't wanna fake it. Wish I could erase it, make you hard believe, but I'm a bad liar, bad liar. Now you know, now you know that I'm a bad liar, bad liar. Now you know you're free to go. That all my dreams never mean wanting the Japanese line in a diamond ring. Ooh, I've been asking. Ooh, I've been asking for problems, problems, problems. Awake my war on the world inside. I take my gun to the enemy side. Oh, I've been asking. Oh, I've been asking for problems, problems, problems. So look me in the eyes. Tell me what you see. Perfect paradise, tearing at the seams. I wish I could escape it. I don't wanna fake it. Wish I could erase it. Make you hard believe, but I'm a bad liar. Bad liar. Now you know. Now.
Ada maghrib di sana memang.
Salat maghrib.
Ya.
Oh, di
Menarik
sana
tuh tadi
salat
Mbak
maghrib
Ines.
udah ya?
Bu Ines, menarik tadi itu ceritanya. Saya baru tahu
Oh
itu.
iya,
Ya, ya.
ya memang.
Seru itu.
Tapi sedih ya. Oh ya, sudah datang hostnya. Kita
Oh.
mungkin
Iya.
akan membuka. Terima kasih Bapak-Bapak Ibu.
Makasih
Thank
Bu
you so
Ines, Pak
much to all
Rahmat.
Terima kasih.
participants who are already patiently waiting for us. And ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we are already in the last session of the second APSSI International Conference 2021. But before we close this event, let's hear the remark from the head of Department of Sociology of Universitas Brawijaya to Dr. Ali Maksum, MAG, MSI. The time is yours.
Ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Salam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, selamat sore dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semuanya. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to say a few words at the end of this conference. First of all, let us praise the presence of Allah who has given His grace and guidance to us. Because of His grace, and we can gather on the second day of event in a good condition. Second, I would like to take this opportunity to convey the summary of this today's conference. I believe that during these 2 days, all of us have obtained a fruitful discussion. It is the second APSSI International Conference 2021 under the theme, The Spectrum of Democracy in Time of Pandemic, Re-Narrating Inequality and Social Justice in Asia. We have learned a lot from the keynote session delivered by the amazing keynote invited speakers and moderators who have shared their interesting work. Once again, on behalf of the committee, thank you for delivering such important material so that all of us can deepen our knowledge about democracy in times of pandemic. Furthermore, I would like to thank all presenters and participants who have joined this conference from all over Asia. I sincerely hope that through your presentation and discussion afterwards, all of us can contribute to solving the problem. Even though the contribution may be small, but it is still valuable. Finally, I would like to thank all the committee members of organizing this conference and ensuring that it proceeds smoothly. I would also like to apologize for any inconvenience that you may experience during this conference. ladies and gentlemen, there is saying in bahasa Indonesia, ada perjumpaan maka ada perpisahan, which mean when there is a meeting, then there will be goodbye. So I thank you once again for your participation and wish you all a good health. I hope that you enjoy your conference, and I do also hope that we can meet again in the future. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for the speech. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to the remark from our chairwoman, to Ms. Vida Ayu Puspitosari. The time is yours.
Okay, MC. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues. Finally, we are at the end of these 2 days of the second APSSI International Conference 2021. It was indeed a fruitful, thought-provoking, and dynamic discussion that we had in the past 2 days. The discussion we had from the keynote symposium panel session reinforced each other to validate the complexity on the issue of democracy and human rights in this pandemic era. From the discussion that we had, it is clear that COVID-19 has exacerbated the already latent and pre-existing condition problem we are still facing in this country, mentioning a few of them such as poverty alleviation, social justice, gender inequality, human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, law enforcement, corruption, domestic violence, crime, and so forth. Those problems are the main variables under the so-called democracy, which has become the main theme of this conference. We have been struggling to enhance democracy quality and resilience so far. Even prior to the pandemic with this COVID-19, it could create setback towards such struggle. From Professor Ward's presentation, I noticed that Indonesia's current democracy is in a state of disarray, that as it failed to promote good governance, eradicate corruption, rule of law, and social justice, and the electoral process is to blame. The electoral mechanism is unsuccessful to promote government that is accountable and strength. Clientism exacerbated by an element of weak civil society. When democracy is experience setback, those it will impact on the endeavor to promote other dimensions of human behavior, such as equality and social justice. The presentation by Professor Gerben clearly described how inequality and social justice, which is structural in its nature, are profound among rural areas in Indonesia. Despite experiencing rural transformation, farmers are still in stage of precarity. In this case, there needs to be more commitment made by government through its policy and relevant actors to enhance development and in the rural area and empower farmers. We can see this initiative from Dr. Dwi's presentation, where she stressed the importance of market institution to be digitalized in order to increase the bargaining position and socioeconomic condition of the farmers that so far has been exploited by the middleman. Technology, in this case, is significant. In terms of sexual oppression, there is a widespread agreement that transgender people have the right to live their lives without fear will no doubt continue to do so. The shouters and the cancelers will continue to shout and attempt to cancel. For the rest of us, the shift in substance of Dr. Nazrina's argumentation and what activists called offer an opportunity to develop reason, evidence, and emotionally literate policy and practices. This idea is in line with Professor Firman's assertion of to act quickly upon the shrinking civil space in Indonesia. And lastly, what Professor Frank pinned is really intriguing. That corona intervention is challenging the established order, but focusing on concrete practices in three aspects such as economy, social infrastructure, and self-practices, and how it meets the theoretical debate. Now, where do we go from here? Conference has left us with a thick descriptive problem, identification, and policy recommendation, which needs to be channeled to policymakers and stakeholders. We, as academics, need to start building or even strengthening engagement with those actors through various means, including publication and sustained public discussion to create discourses on such strategic and alarming issues. We are in fact aiming for policy initiative and change for betterment of people that have been marginalized or even oppressed under the so-called Indonesia's democracy. Even though this conference has ended, I regard the research that we have all been engaging so far as still a working in progress. Further research must be conducted to continuously gather evidence-based data that will be beneficial for policy-wise. I look forward to seeing all of you in the third APSSI conference in the future. I would like to thank once again the committee of the second APSSI conference that has made this event succeeded. All the best to all of you. Please stay in good health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Wida.
Thank you so much, Ms. Riddell, for the stage. And first, we want to show our deepest apology because the Symposium 4 with Dr. Alejandro Fuente has been canceled. But however, we always try to do our best to provide you with the great conference experience. And we believe every participant here has already given their best for the presentation and all acquired a lot of interesting thoughts and ideas. But now we will announce the best oral presentation across the term. For best oral presentation in session 1 goes to Mr. Sandi Nur Iqbal Raharjo from National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia and University Utara Malaysia. He's proven to show the best presentation and idea from session 1 with theme Politics of Identity and Sectarianism, titled Transnationalism of Sebatik Island, Malaysia, Indonesia, a Regional Economic Integration Perspective. Congratulations again to Mr. Sandi. And next, for best oral presentation in session 1, I'm in session 2, goes to Mrs. Irza Furudin from Universitas Brawijaya. Her presentation titled COVID-19, Multidimensional Poverty and Semi-Urban Women Resilience in Malang has shown a great thought about how women's resilience in Malang has been affected by many factors. In session 2, with theme Reconfiguring Gender and Intersectionality. Congratulations to Mrs. Irza. And last, for best oral presentation in session 3 goes to Miss Getar Hati from Yiwa Women University in session 3 with theme Social Resilience in Time of Pandemic. Her paper titled Social Entrepreneurship Challenges and Strategies to Strengthen the Resiliency of Community Enterprises During COVID-19 Pandemic in Indonesia. Congratulations to Miss Gitar Hati. And congratulations to all the participants who has shown the best of this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our event today. And we would like to send our best gratitude to all honorable guests and participants from day 1 until day 2 of the second APSSI International Conference 2021. Also, we would like to send our deepest appreciation to all the committees of the second APSSI International Conference 2021. Thank you for all your hard work, and whom without we will not witness an event as amazing as this one. This event is organized by Asosiasi Program Studi Sosiologi Indonesia, Department of Sosiologi Universitas Brawijaya, National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia, and Department of Sociology Universitas Sumatera Utara. Finally, I am Via Olivia as your Master of Ceremony signing out. Thank you so much and see you on the second APSSI International Conference 2021.
Thank you.
Oke, terima kasih.
Terima kasih.